He had never given a dime to charity and held a firm belief in the absence of second chances, until two dancing twin girls, bearing his features and her gaze, dismantled everything he thought he understood. Garrett Winslow had never contributed to charitable causes. He refrained from contributing financially to causes, avoided sponsoring events, and never allowed his name to be associated with foundation plaques or hospital wings. Indeed, he took great care to steer clear of situations that bore any semblance to empathy. For him, charity was merely a sentimental diversion for those who failed to grasp the true nature of the world. He constructed towering edifices, not compassion. Every endeavor he engaged in blossomed into success. He commanded respect and instilled fear, yet warmth was a quality no one would have attributed to him. And that was precisely how he preferred it. He was an impressive figure, the sort that captured attention the instant he stepped into a space. Statuesque, with a commanding presence, consistently adorned in finely crafted attire. His hair, a gentle flow of golden curls, surrounded a face defined by sharp angles, a strong jaw, high cheekbones, and eyes so strikingly blue they resembled polished glass. Every aspect of Garrett exuded precision, refinement, and luxury. Yet, he had lost all traces of gentleness no longer. He had dedicated countless years to boardrooms and construction sites, endured too many late nights poring over contracts and acquisitions, and invested too much effort in crafting a world where every detail was meticulously accounted for. Kindness was for the inexperienced. Garrett forged his dominion through unwavering resolve and solid foundations. Upon realizing he had arrived at the incorrect venue that Thursday night, a charity event for children's art programs rather than the exclusive investor dinner he intended to attend, his initial impulse was to retreat and exit the scene. The ballroom was adorned with delicate paper cranes and twinkling string lights, rather than opulent crystal chandeliers and lavish caviar. The hallway was adorned with vibrant children's paintings. A quaint string quartet performed a delightfully upbeat melody by the entrance. It simply wasn't his vibe. He moved toward the exit, frustration bubbling within him as he mentally drafted the reprimanding email for his assistant. Just as he pivoted, the lights faded, and a voice declared the upcoming performance. Let us extend a warm welcome to Emma and Evie Moore from the Hope Studio Ballet program. The audience offered a courteous round of applause. Garrett hardly took note of the names. He seemed oblivious to the words being spoken. Until the melody began. Two young girls gracefully entered the stage, adorned in identical white ballet dresses. Their golden curls glistened beneath the spotlight. Their faces, round and angelic, perfectly mirrored each other, radiating a serene, focused elegance that transcended their years. And those eyes, azure, the identical, rare, ice-clear blue that greeted him each morning in the mirror. Garrett's body froze. He was immobilized, struggled for breath. The young performers moved in perfect harmony, twirling and soaring across the stage with remarkable assurance. The surroundings dissolved into nothingness. Silence enveloped the space. The absence of an orchestra, an audience, or the soft clinking of wine glasses created a void that echoed in the stillness. Only them, these two flawless, unattainable reflections of his being. And yet, he had never encountered them prior. He reassured himself that it was nothing more than a figment of his imagination. It was merely an illusion created by the light, a common occurrence where children bore a likeness to adults, or perhaps just a matter of chance. Yet he was aware of the truth. It transcended mere resemblance. It was acknowledgement. His jaw tightened, and his hands balled into fists at his sides, not out of anger, but perhaps from a different emotion, shock, perhaps, or dread. As the performance concluded and the audience burst into applause, Garrett remained silent, his hands still at his sides. He just gazed. One of the girls offered a delicate bow, and as her arm glided elegantly to her side, the light shimmered on something silver adorning her wrist. A delicate bracelet, fragile, slender, and gleaming. A form and design that coiled something profound within him. He recognized that bracelet from a previous encounter. Long ago, and in an instant all the certainties he held about his existence started to fracture. The applause dwindled to a gentle whisper, yet Garrett stood motionless, his gaze fixed on the two girls as they exited the stage, still clasping each other's hands. His thoughts struggled to comprehend the scene he had just encountered. The likeness was strikingly exact, almost flawless. It wasn't merely their eyes or the way their curls danced with each step. It was something profound, something instinctive, a tug, acknowledgement, and that bracelet, that cursed bracelet, a slender silver band, almost imperceptible unless the light caught it at the perfect angle. Yet he had encountered it previously, long ago, on the wrist of a woman whose name he had nearly succeeded in erasing from his memory. He navigated the throng instinctively, slipping past polite exchanges and inquisitive stares. As he made his way down the corridor leading to the backstage area, a volunteer attempted to intervene, but he swept by with a frosty gaze that left no room for discussion. He was not a man accustomed to hearing the word no. The sound of his shoes echoed on the polished floor as he turned a corner, discovering a narrow corridor filled with children celebrating after their performances, laughter ringing out as they embraced their instructors and parents. And then he laid eyes on her. It wasn't the girls, although they were present as well, perched on a bench, enjoying their juice boxes, but rather the woman next to them. In her late 20s or perhaps early 30s, she carries herself with the grace of a dancer, embodying a weary yet captivating beauty. Auburn brown hair gathered haphazardly into a bun, dark circles beneath her eyes that failed to conceal the subtle intensity within them. She knelt to fix one of the girl's ballet slippers, sharing a quiet word that sparked a fit of giggles between them. Garrett moved forward with caution. He found himself at a loss for words, lacking any sort of strategy. He felt an undeniable urge to uncover the truth. The woman rose to her feet as he approached, her expression one of confusion. Her lack of recognition felt like a deeper wound, amplifying the discomfort of the moment. "Excuse me," he said, his voice calm yet firm. "Are those girls yours?" Her expression changed at once, becoming guarded and shielding. "What prompts your inquiry?" Her tone was assertive, yet respectful. Garrett paused, uncertainty flickering in his mind. "Because they resemble me perfectly." A moment of silence lingered in the air, an expansive, lingering quiet. One of the girls, Emma, he observed, glanced up and blinked at him with wide, inquisitive eyes. The other continued to sip her juice, oblivious to the tempest brewing in the realm of adults. The woman stood tall, her arms now crossed defiantly. "She stated that she is their aunt. Her mother was my sibling." Garrett felt his heart racing. What was that? The woman stated that she had passed away 6 years prior, in the process of giving birth. He sensed a subtle shift in the floor beneath him. He had hoped, no, not just hoped, but yearned, that the mother would be someone he could face, someone capable of providing answers. Yet the realization of her absence, that she had lost her life in the act of bringing them into existence, constricted something painfully within his heart. Apologies escaped his lips, sincere and heartfelt. "I was unaware. What was her name again?" The woman observed him intently, attempting to decipher the nuances of his expression. "Maggie. Maggie Moore." The name hit hard, leaving a sting in its wake. Garrett had known her for just a brief moment, yet he could still recall the grace of her movements, the melody of her laughter, and the gentle warmth in her voice as she uttered his name. Once, years ago, they shared a whirlwind weekend, enveloped in a haze of music, wine, and a feeling that teetered on the edge of love. He never laid eyes on her again after that. He never glanced, and now it had become too late. He spoke softly. "I knew her. Once upon a time, we existed as one." In summary, the woman's gaze sharpened. "What is your name?" "Garrett Winslow." She took a deep breath. You are that person." Now there was acknowledgement, not from an image or a recollection, but from the tales her sister likely shared. "She brought you up." At one time, Garrett nodded, feeling a wave of emotions wash over him. "And the bracelet," he inquired. "The one that your niece had on." It belonged to Maggie, the woman stated. "She donned it daily until her last breath." She handed it to Emma right before the girls reached the age of 5. I mentioned it was from someone significant. He gulped nervously. He had never faced the weight of his past in such a profound way. It was a constant pursuit he managed to evade. Yet there it was before him, sipping juice and beaming with that same charmingly crooked grin he remembered from those days. "Are they aware?" he inquired, his voice scarcely rising above a murmur. The woman paused, uncertainty flickering in her eyes. "They understand that their mother held deep affection for someone special. His name remains a mystery to them." Garrett cast his gaze downward at the girls once more. They held no fear of him. Not at this moment. They regarded him with the same wonder that children display towards anyone unfamiliar, with curiosity, openness, and a lack of judgment. Time remained. He expressed a desire to understand them. "If you would permit me." The woman's gaze mellowed just a touch, yet the caution lingered on her features. "They have endured more than enough already. I refuse to allow anyone else to vanish from their lives." "I'm not going to vanish," he declared, and this time, his words carried a weight of certainty. He was pledging a promise. Garrett lay awake throughout the night. He lingered in his penthouse, enveloped by stillness and transparent walls. The urban glow beyond creating reflections that felt foreign to him now. The bracelet, the girls, Maggie's name resonating in that hushed corridor backstage, each moment cycling through his thoughts, denying him any peace. His chest throbbed with a sensation he hadn't experienced in years, not since the time before he mastered the art of suppressing anything deemed unnecessary. Yet, this was not an experience he could neatly categorize. He couldn't categorize it as mere distraction or something irrelevant. These girls were familiar faces. They were an integral part of his being. By morning, he found himself on the phone with one of New York's most discreet private investigators, sharing only 2 pieces of information: the name Maggie Moore and the year of her death. He refrained from explaining the reason, only emphasizing the urgency of the matter. In just 48 hours, the file found its way into his hands. Garrett found himself unprepared for the impact of the report. It struck him with a force he had never anticipated. Maggie passed away in a modest local hospital due to unforeseen complications that arose during childbirth. The birth certificates did not include a father's name. Lauren Moore, her elder sister, took on the role of guardian without hesitation. No legal conflicts. There are no inquiries. No relatives had stepped up, and the girls had stayed under Lauren's guardianship all along. They had relocated 3 times, consistently settling in unpretentious neighborhoods, always within reach of dance schools or community centers. Lauren had juggled various roles throughout the years, instructing, tidying up, anything that ensured they stayed nourished together. Garrett perused the report twice, then placed it aside and gazed out the window for an extended period. Guilt was a strange landscape for him, yet now it lay heavy like an anchor in his gut. Maggie passed away in solitude, having brought 2 children into the world who would remain unaware of her existence. All the while, he found himself in boardrooms, collecting awards, shattering records, persuading himself that his past held no significance. He was determined not to reappear without a strategy, so he contacted Lauren via a discreet route, enlisting the help of one of her studio assistants who consented to deliver the letter. It was neither lengthy nor filled with theatrics. He maintained a straightforward approach. His desire was to assist, in terms of finances, emotions, or any other way she might permit. He had no intention of removing the girls from their lives or causing any upheaval. He simply desired to be there. Lauren took her time before replying. Yet, just 4 days later, she reached out. Her voice carried a sense of caution, yet remained warm. She mentioned that the girls had inquired about him, particularly Emma. She expressed that the bracelet had transformed into something sacred for them, a connection to a narrative they couldn't fully grasp yet profoundly believed in. Lauren made no promises, yet she consented to his visit. Never solitary, not at this moment. Yet he could enter the studio, watch silently, and perhaps, just perhaps, start to cultivate something resembling trust. The next afternoon, Garrett showed up ahead of schedule. The studio, though small and a bit frayed at the seams, brimmed with vitality. Children laughed joyfully in the corridors, educators provided kind guidance, and the soothing sound of piano melodies floated from a nearby practice room. It was a stark contrast to the steel and glass environment he had always known. It was truly a sight to behold. He lingered by the entrance, observing from afar as the twins elongated their limbs at the bar. They glided in flawless harmony, their faces intent, their golden curls elegantly secured in identical buns. He remained unseen by them thus far. He aimed to avoid surprising them. Lauren walked over to him a few minutes later, arms crossed yet slightly more open. She spoke softly, reflecting on the mix of good days and bad they've experienced. They still have much to learn, yet they possess a sense of curiosity, particularly Emma. Evie is increasingly careful. She observes individuals carefully before granting them access. Garrett nodded, at a loss for words. He yearned to pose a myriad of inquiries. How were they as infants? How did Maggie spend her last days? Were they discussing her? Was he a topic of conversation? Yet he kept it to himself. As the class concluded, the girls hurried away to change, while Lauren kindly provided him with a moment to converse with them in the lobby. It was short, respectful. It was Emma who initiated the greeting. Evie gestured from behind her. He refrained from reaching out or applying excessive pressure. He simply knelt down to their level and remarked, "I'm glad I had the chance to witness your dance. Both of you were truly remarkable." Emma offered a timid smile. "Do you enjoy dancing?" Garrett chuckled gently. "Not at all." She let out a soft, melodic laugh. Evie remained silent, yet her gaze never wavered. It wasn't a significant advancement. It lacked any sense of drama. Yet it marked the start of something new. For the first time in his meticulously managed existence, Garrett experienced an unexpected sensation. Anticipation. Garrett began making frequent trips to the studio. Initially, he maintained a respectful distance, observing silently and acknowledging the instructors with nods, never intruding. The girls started to pay more attention to him. Emma would steal a glance over her shoulder while stretching, offer a fleeting smile when she noticed him watching, and then return to her routine as if nothing had occurred. Evie took her time to open up. She seldom met his gaze head-on, yet she consistently remained in his presence. She watched him silently, much like careful children often do, with wide eyes and unformed questions lingering in her mind. Lauren fulfilled her commitment, permitting his presence while keeping a vigilant eye on all that transpired. She always kept them close, and Garrett didn't insist otherwise. He understood that he had yet to truly earn anything, not in a meaningful way. A stranger sought to break a silence that had endured for almost 7 years. And he realized something now that had eluded him before. Being present wasn't merely about making a few grand appearances. It revolved around steadfastness, modesty, and perseverance. Demands that had never been placed upon him before now suddenly emerged. He began to bring little items. A fresh set of art supplies caught his eye as he observed the girls with their tattered crayons. New leotards in gentle pastel hues, ensuring to select coordinating sets for each. Every time he turned to Lauren first, he was cautious not to overstep. He was reluctant to appear as though he was seeking their approval. However, the girls had a different perspective. They started to make their way toward him after class, cautiously at the beginning. Emma inquired about his profession, the architecture around him, and whether he had ever visited Paris. Evie absorbed the conversation, occasionally sharing a brief, whispered remark with her sister, her smile brightening as he replied. On a drizzly afternoon, Garrett kindly volunteered to take them home when Lauren's car failed to start. She paused, uncertainty creeping in, yet the tempest intensified, and the girls were already drenched from their dash to the studio door. In the car, Emma occupied the front seat, bombarding him with inquiries about every detail on the dashboard, while Evie gazed out the window, silently observing the rain as it traced lines across the glass. Garrett recounted his initial venture into construction, sharing his past fears of addressing an audience, and how, as a child, He would often evade his piano lessons. They chuckled. It was trivial, whimsical details, yet it held authenticity. Later that week, he arrived at the studio bearing a delightful surprise. A miniature-scale model of a building, intricately designed with tiny ballet dancers carved into the facade. He mentioned that perhaps one day they would be interested in collaborating on a project like this. Emma radiated joy. Evie moved in closer to examine the intricate details. Lauren lingered in the doorway, her arms crossed, observing the scene with keen interest. Her expression remained a mystery, yet she allowed him to continue. Ultimately, Garrett received an invitation to their recital. It was a significant moment, one that Lauren had not given away easily. He wore a plain navy sweater and jeans, making an effort to avoid the appearance of someone who once donned bespoke suits. The auditorium buzzed with energy, filled to the brim with parents and teachers, as melodies reverberated through the space. As the twins stepped onto the stage, Garrett felt a sudden catch in his breath. They glided with an effortless grace, each movement intentional and fluid, their expressions radiating a serene happiness. He was unfamiliar with ballet, yet he understood the essence of pride, and it struck him with an intensity he wasn't prepared to face. Following the performance, Emma dashed directly to him. "Have you noticed? Did you catch a glimpse of us?" she inquired, her cheeks aglow and her eyes sparkling. Garrett lowered himself and enveloped her in a warm embrace instinctively. She embraced him wholeheartedly, without a moment's doubt. Evie moved in gradually, positioning herself next to him, their shoulders nearly touching. He cast his gaze upon them and offered a warm smile. "You were absolutely amazing," he remarked. "I've never encountered anything quite so stunning." Lauren arrived, carrying their coats, and there was a noticeable shift in her expression. Not entirely. Never give in. Yet something gentler. "They're talking about you," she murmured, watching as the girls dashed ahead. Increasingly with each passing day, Garrett acknowledged with a nod. He understood the implications of that. He was being granted access, not in a single moment, and certainly not devoid of apprehension. Yet the door was being opened. This time he was here to stay. With each passing week, Garrett seamlessly integrated into the girls' daily lives. He had transcended the role of a mere background figure or an enigmatic adult observing from the periphery. He was the one who lingered after class, inquiring about their day, recalling who favored strawberries and who despised them, who took their bags when they were weary and tied their shoelaces without needing a prompt. There was still a sense of distance, particularly with Evie, who continued to be more reserved, yet even she had begun to share subtle smiles and gentle nods toward him. Emma, on the other hand, had completely welcomed his presence. She shared her aspirations with him, spoke of her peers, and expressed her desire to visit Paris and dance atop the rooftops. She created illustrations for him, charming crayon drawings of structures with wings, platforms in the clouds, and one that took his breath away for a moment. A family of 3 clasping hands beneath a tree. She had marked them with unsteady script, "Me, Evie, and Dad." As she handed it to him, her demeanor was nonchalant, devoid of any fanfare, yet Garrett treasured it, keeping it neatly folded in his wallet as if it were the most precious item in his possession. He started embracing additional responsibilities, not due to any external request, but driven by his own desire. He collected them from school while Lauren was busy with work. He mastered the art of braiding hair by immersing himself in YouTube tutorials during the late hours of the night. He guided them through their lines for a school play, even embodying the minor roles with over-the-top voices that had them rolling with laughter. One by one, they began to call him Dad. First Emma, experimenting with it softly, as if she were breaking in a new pair of shoes. Then Evie, softly and avoiding eye contact, as if she were letting go of something she had kept inside for far too long. The initial moment he encountered it, he held back his response, not from surprise, but because the term bore such significance that he feared his voice might falter. The transformation wasn't limited to just the girls. Garrett underwent a transformation as well. He ceased the habit of checking his email every 5 minutes. His phone lingered in his pocket with increasing frequency. He awoke without a thought of quarterly profits or stock prices on his mind. Instead, he pondered if the girls had fresh ballet tights, if there were sufficient groceries for their beloved snacks, and whether he had recalled to sign the school form for the field trip on Friday. The stress was of a different nature, subdued yet profoundly significant. He discovered that laughter came more easily to him, resting more soundly, experiencing a sense of humanity that had eluded him for years. Lauren noticed the shift too. Gradually, her defenses began to crumble. They enjoyed coffee together on certain mornings following the school drop-off. She shared tales of Maggie, recounting how she would twirl in the living room to vintage French melodies, how she once held the belief that music had the power to mend all things. Garrett absorbed the words of others, allowing them to flow while he remained mostly silent. He yearned to gather those fragments of Maggie, to assemble a portrait of the woman he never truly had the chance to understand. At times, Lauren would entrust the girls to him for brief intervals. What began as an hour gradually unfolded into an entire afternoon, then an entire evening. Though unvoiced, the trust was gradually being restored, moment by moment. One evening, Garrett received a call. Evie's voice was gentle, quivering with emotion. She stirred from a haunting dream and turned to Lauren, inquiring if she could reach out to him. He refrained from asking questions. He gently urged her to take a breath, reassuring her of his presence and her safety. She remained silent, yet held the line until her breath steadied. Once she ended the call, Garrett remained still, cradling the phone in his hand as if it had transformed into the most cherished possession he had. He had no intention of taking Maggie's place. He was unable to, yet he was transforming into something different, something genuine, something reliable, something that could be depended upon. Not just a visitor, not just a fleeting existence, a dad. Despite the gradual pace of the journey, marked by fleeting moments and cautious strides, Garrett came to realize that this was the true essence of love. No elaborate proclamations or flawless moments. Simply remaining, deciding to remain despite the challenges. Particularly at that moment. Nearly a year had passed since Garrett inadvertently stumbled into that charity recital. And since that moment, his life had transformed completely. He had constructed his realm from steel, strategy, and solitude. Yet now it brimmed with dance shoes in the hallway, glittering school projects adorning the fridge, and two little girls who clung to him as if he had always belonged there. He felt no nostalgia for his past existence, neither the corporate meetings, nor the relentless timelines, nor the hollow triumphs that once excited him. For the first time, his success was defined not by figures but by fleeting instances, such as the effortless way Evie sought his hand or how Emma had begun to call him Dad, with a confidence that suggested the title had always been his to claim. Yet joy often casts its own shadows. A letter arrived, an official-looking envelope nestled in Lauren's mailbox. Initially, Garrett believed it was an error, but when Lauren called him, her voice laced with tension, she urged, "You need to come over." At this moment, upon his arrival, she presented him with the letter, observing intently as he absorbed its contents in quiet contemplation. A message arrived from a woman named Judith Carter, who happens to be Maggie's aunt, an individual Garrett was unfamiliar with, and it seemed Lauren hadn't heard of them in more than 10 years either. The letter revealed that Judith had discovered the existence of the twins and planned to pursue custody, expressing concerns regarding their present living conditions and the unexpected appearance of a wealthy individual asserting he was their father. She was considering pursuing legal action. Garrett's first response was one of intense anger. Where had this woman been during Maggie's passing? Where was she while Lauren spent countless nights soothing two newborns by herself? Where was she when the girls required new shoes, medicine, or assistance with their studies? He had encountered this strategy previously, in the realm of commerce, where individuals recognized potential and attempted to disguise their avarice with a facade of virtue. Yet this was unlike anything else. This felt intimate. Lauren, in her own way, felt more fear than anger. She understood the intricacies of the system. She had nurtured the girls without formal adoption, serving as their legal guardian through emergency family placement. With Garrett's involvement, Marked by his high profile and unexpected presence, the narrative took on a chaotic twist. The courts often overlooked love, effort, and the countless sleepless nights that accompanied them. At times, they merely gazed at the page. They made an effort to maintain their composure for the girls, yet children have an uncanny ability to sense when something is amiss. Evie began inquiring whether she and Emma would need to relocate. Emma held onto Garrett tightly as he bid her good night, her voice barely above a whisper, asking, "You won't let them take us, will you?" Garrett embraced her firmly and revealed the truth. Absolutely not. Their legal advisors cautioned them that Judith had engaged a formidable family law attorney renowned for leveraging personal controversies to influence case outcomes. Before long, Garrett's history was laid bare for all to see. Pieces started to emerge. A billionaire CEO asserts he has secret children, transforming from a cold empire builder into an unexpected father. Old photos, headlines, and quotes from former colleagues, who were quick to depict him as emotionally distant and fixated on his image, have taken over the internet. His standing disintegrated in an instant. Partners withdrew their investments. The boards demanded his departure from the projects he had dedicated years to developing. The media showed little regard for accuracy. The narrative was what they sought. Yet Garrett chose not to respond in the manner that everyone anticipated. He refrained from initiating PR campaigns or enlisting the help of reputation consultants. His sole attention was directed towards safeguarding the girls. He committed wholeheartedly to gifts. He was present at each school event, every medical visit, and all the rehearsals. He responded to their inquiries with sincerity, rather than assurances. He endured the court evaluations with a calm resilience, allowing the facts to convey their own narrative. He spoke honestly, revealing his ignorance of their existence, expressing sorrow for the years lost, and declaring his readiness to sacrifice everything else to ensure they remained in their rightful place. The court hearings were intense. Judith portrayed Lauren as unpredictable and Garrett as self-serving. However, the girls were summoned to share their stories, not before the entire courtroom, but in confidential meetings with child advocates. And it was their expressions that started to transform everything. Emma conveyed the sense of safety that Garrett brought into her life. Evie mentioned that he never pressured her to speak. He simply listened patiently until she felt prepared. When they spoke of him, the word home escaped their lips, and it felt like home, wild and flawed, indeed, yet brimming with affection. As the judge finally announced the verdict, an extended silence enveloped the room, a moment that seemed to split time itself. Judith's request was turned down. Lauren would retain full guardianship, while Garrett was granted complete legal recognition as their father, along with shared custody. The judge highlighted that the children's best interests were served not solely by biological ties, but through unwavering presence, consistency, and dedication. Garrett remained stoic and did not express any joy or excitement upon hearing the ruling. He glanced at Lauren, then shifted his gaze to the girls seated behind her, finally releasing a breath he hadn't taken in weeks. A lengthy journey lay before us, yet they remained stationary. Nor was he. The weeks following the custody ruling were akin to gasping for air after a near-drowning experience. There was no burst of happiness, no elaborate festivities, just a calm acceptance, a feeling that, for the first time, the earth beneath them had finally found stability. Garrett had not only battled to keep his daughters near, but he had also deconstructed the former self that once thought he could stand alone. Every aspect of his existence revolved around those two little girls and the woman who had nurtured them when no one else would. It was far from straightforward. Restoration has always eluded us. Yet the turmoil had subsided, revealing something genuine in its wake. Garrett has successfully sold the penthouse. It seemed like a testament to a person he had left behind. He purchased a quaint little house in the same area as the studio, a simple, sun-drenched dwelling with a yard for the girls to frolic and a spacious kitchen perfect for creating delightful baking chaos. He was indifferent to its absence of polished details or lofty panoramas. The tiny ballet shoes by the door, the drawings taped to the fridge, and the laughter that echoed through the rooms were what truly held significance. He took it upon himself to paint the girls' bedroom, selected coordinating beds, and assisted them in hanging fairy lights above their windows. Emma was adamant about the stars. Evie yearned for bookshelves. He provided both of them. Lauren resided just a few streets away, yet she found herself visiting almost daily. They had yet to articulate what they had become. Family, co-parents, something deeper, but it was of no consequence. Their bond was silent yet profoundly sensed. At times, they would engage in lengthy conversations over coffee, while at other moments, they would share weary looks during homework and dinner preparations, conveying a deep understanding without the need for many words. Garrett had mastered the art of listening. He ceased to occupy quiet moments with answers. He remained with them, patiently observing as events transpired. The most remarkable blessing that fatherhood bestowed upon him was a patience he had never realized he possessed. His former existence lingered in the news. Articles emerged that scrutinized his authenticity, dissected his decline, and pondered whether his transformation was calculated or genuine. He paid them no mind. Individuals were free to express their opinions. He had stopped gauging his worth by their judgments. His realm had vanished, yet he felt no longing for it. He exchanged the elegance of marble floors for the simplicity of sidewalk chalk and never regretted it. Each morning, he strolled the girls to school, greeting the familiar neighbors he once ignored. He assisted with recitals, accompanied field trips, and endured countless show-and-tell presentations. The community started to perceive him in a new light, not as the distant mogul portrayed in the media, but as the individual who consistently appeared, day after day, regardless of the weather, without fanfare or declarations, simply being there. The girls now held a trust in him that transcended mere words. No one inquired about his plans to stay any longer. They were aware. One evening, after settling them into bed, he lingered in the hallway, gazing at a framed photograph on the wall. A snapshot of Maggie, beaming with the twins nestled in her embrace. It was captured merely weeks prior to her passing. The photograph had a slight blur to it, the frame, crafted by the girls in art class, adorned with dried glitter and unevenly placed stickers. Underneath lay the bracelet. Garrett had carefully arranged it in a shadow box, positioned alongside a note that Maggie had penned long ago, which Lauren had discovered hidden within a journal. It was brief, merely a handful of lines, but he revisited them frequently. If anything were to happen to me, I wish for someone to recognize them, not merely for their current state, but for the potential they hold within. Person who remains. Garrett had no intention of playing the hero. He sought neither accolades nor salvation. He yearned to embody the man Maggie had hoped was still hidden within him. He yearned to prove himself deserving of the faith his daughters had placed in him. A faith forged not by lineage, but through his unwavering presence, time and time again, despite the discomfort, the pain, and the temptation to simply fade away. The world beyond continued to refer to him as Garrett Winslow, once a CEO, a fallen tycoon, a man stripped of all he held dear. Yet within that quaint abode, characterized by its creaky entrance and an assortment of mugs, he was just Dad. It exceeded all expectations. Spring came softly, more like a gentle murmur than a bold announcement. The air became gentler, the days stretched out, and the trees lining Garrett Street started to burst forth with delicate pink blossoms that danced down like confetti whenever the breeze swept by. A year had passed since that night he stumbled into the charity recital, yet it no longer seemed like an accident. It seemed destined, as if the universe had been gently steering him to that instant, toward the two little girls who had illuminated his existence and created room for something greater. Life had found a cadence that, in the past, would have filled him with dread due to its unadorned nature. The morning frenzy unfolded like a new board meeting, with lunches being packed, elusive shoes being hunted down, tangled hair being tamed, all while coffee was poured in a rush. He still stumbled at times. There was that one occasion when he forgot Evie's dance bag and had to navigate through the bustling city traffic, clutching a bag filled with leotards and snacks, arriving just as the music began. Yet, he learned to find humor in his blunders, and the girls joined in his laughter. These days, even Lauren finds herself laughing more often. She seemed to have shed the burden that once pressed heavily upon her. They had forged a partnership, even if neither had articulated it as such. Certain things existed beyond the confines of labels. In the year following the upheaval of his life, Garrett had birthed an unforeseen venture. A modest nonprofit called the Maggie Moore Foundation, aimed at uplifting community arts initiatives and assisting single parents. He refrained from delivering speeches or organizing galas. Instead, he discreetly supported ballet classes for children whose parents juggled 2 jobs and provided grants to women striving to reconstruct their lives. He always refrained from attaching his name to any work. It wasn't about being acknowledged. It was about ensuring that every child received the attention they deserved, preventing any from being overlooked simply because someone deemed them unworthy of the effort. One afternoon, just before the twins' spring recital, Garrett stood backstage, clutching a bouquet of wildflowers he had gathered himself from the park. He donned jeans and a button-down shirt, eschewing the formality of a suit, with a trace of glitter on his wrist, a remnant from assisting Evie with a last-minute costume dilemma. The auditorium was packed. Guardians, educators, companions. He ought to have experienced a sense of unease. Instead, he felt composed. The girls moved gracefully to a composition titled Home, crafted by their teacher specifically for them. Garrett had observed them rehearse it countless times in the living room, the way they glided with subtle elegance, as if they understood the narrative their bodies were conveying. As they entered the stage, silence enveloped the audience. The music started, soft and unhurried, and Garrett felt a catch in his breath. Emma and Evie glided across the stage with an effortless grace, as if it were their rightful domain, and with each movement, Garrett sensed a stirring deep within his chest. Not shatter, but unveil. As the last note faded away, the crowd burst into enthusiastic applause. The girls took their bows, hand in hand, beaming with a radiance that could illuminate an entire city. Garrett continued to applaud fervently, his palms aching from the effort. After the performance, they discovered him, and they didn't flee. With an air of unwavering confidence, they approached him, and Emma, beaming, inquired, "Did we do all right?" Garrett knelt down, pressed his lips to the crown of each head, and whispered, "You were magic." That evening, they gathered around the table for a meal at home, enjoying pizza and orange soda. The girls still adorned in their costumes, glitter scattered across the floor, laughter resonating throughout the house. Once they drifted off, entwined as they had been since the beginning, Garrett settled in the hallway outside their room, observing them for an extended period. His mind was devoid of any lingering questions. No longer any doubt about his worth. He had his flaws, yet he was there. He belonged to them, and they belonged to him. As he strolled toward the kitchen, he glanced at the photo of Maggie hanging on the wall. Her smile was the same as always, playful and insightful, as though she had anticipated every moment of this unfolding scene. Beside her photograph, the bracelet rested in its glass display, gleaming gently beneath the warm glow of the hallway light. It had transcended its former significance. The promise was fulfilled. Garrett poured a cup of tea, stepped out onto the porch, and embraced the serene stillness of the evening. He had stopped pursuing anything at all. He was already there. In that quiet moment, accompanied by the distant chirping of crickets and the lingering echo of his daughter's laughter, he grasped the true essence of wholeness. Not due to the greatness of his creation, but rather because of his perseverance in remaining. For he embraced love when he had the option to turn back, and that, he understood, would forever remain the greatest achievement of his life. For me, the conclusion of this narrative isn't centered on an ideal resolution. Rather, it highlights the subtle strength found in transformation. Garrett did not reclaim a vast wealth, nor did he restore his dominion, or ascend once more to the pinnacle of the corporate realm. His actions held profound significance. He transformed into a person who prioritized love above legacy, presence above power, and family above fear. Observing his transformation from emotionally detached and self-absorbed to a person who discovers tranquility in bedtime rituals and sparkly cover illustrations is a narrative we often overlook. Nuanced, genuine, and profoundly relatable. What I appreciate most is that the narrative embraces his imperfections and acknowledges the challenges of the journey. He lost many things, indeed, yet he discovered something genuine. A home not constructed from bricks and riches, but built on trust, forgiveness, and the commitment to remain. And that renders his serene, porch-lit conclusion one of the most profound forms of happiness there is, the kind that is truly deserved.